This video is sponsored by SciSpot, the best tech stack for modern biotech.
Thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Ram. Would love to start with your story.
Personally, it's been very enriching for me. Last 10 years, about 9 to 10 years, I was basically an academician with a lot of passion towards genomics and especially the interface and intersection of genomics with technology. There's a lot of gap in understanding genomics in relation with health in whole world. And in 2008 to 10, there were new technologies that were coming up. And that's what really excited me as an individual, as a scientist who was in academics, and that's when we jumped into industry. And I was lucky to meet Sam Santosh and Mahesh Pratapneni, who were the founder and co-founders who wanted to start off genomics in India. And I joined them 2013, and that's when the whole thing started with a lot of ideas what we need to do. So that's when one thing came out very clear was there's a huge potential of genomics, especially in a country like India, where we can impact millions of lives. So it was not just as a business, it's not just as a company we are starting. It's a lot to do with how much impact we can do, a positive impact we can do in this country, in this part of the world, where it can change millions of lives, helps whole healthcare stakeholders. So that was the inspiration for us.
Would you mind double-clicking when you say making an impact? So when you say make an impact, is it to save lives, improve health? Like what exactly is that impact, and like how big that impact can be?
So there's a past, present, and future for what we are working on. So past has been knowledge was less. There was no scalability. There was no easy way to decipher the genomic science. Okay, both in terms of cost, both in terms of technology, in terms of the time that takes, everything. Okay, so that was a major limitation. So as I mentioned to you earlier, this 2008-10 were the years where new technologies were coming up, which made this more accessible, more economical for everyone to do. I'm talking 2009-10 and today, huge difference. Okay, and we are come down by almost about 70 to 80% decreased cost, decreased time that takes to decipher. So when we wanted to start, when we went and I and Sam used to go, and I used to go to all the healthcare practitioners. So it used to be super specialty oncologists, it used to be super specialty pediatricians, obstetrics, gynecology and all, and some big hospitals, big doctors like Gangaram Hospital, Apollo's, Max, everywhere, and used to go and talk, okay, so do you think this is going to serve you? At least 70% of them said that, Ram, this will be fantastic for us, but the costs are prohibitive. And they used to send, for answers, they used to send patient samples out of the country for about 10x of cost that we wanted to do here. So that's when we thought, okay, there is a huge unmet need, because as a demography, India is very large, and the awareness was extremely low. Okay, not just with patients, but even with healthcare practitioners. And many thought it would not be a reality that someday we will be doing democratizing genomics across masses. Now, the two impacts that can happen, one on the illness side, the other on the wellness side. Okay, the illness is happening now, a huge impact, is a disruption country. Wellness will happen. So that's the future. So past was not great, present is really promising. And the overall impact, which we feel is going to be much larger, is going to be on the wellness in the future. So yeah, so these are the two things. Right now we are harnessing the existing power of technology, power of data, power of analysis, power of our whole skill sets, capabilities to identify the ill people, what the causes it, how to manage better, how to treat better, what drugs are available, and make it as accessible as economical to the Indian patients. So a lot of challenges in India, no insurance coverage, paying from pocket. They already was spent lakhs of rupees on the treatment. So we are breaking down those barriers. And of course, with us, when we started, we created market. Now there are about half a dozen of companies who are jumping on the same thing and creating much better chances for many people to harness it. But future is something that we are seriously looking at. We are innovating new things. We are coming up places where how we can prevent illness. So the preventive aspect is going to be much more exciting, much more enriching, much more impactful as a whole population is concerned.
I like how you put it. It's just a wellness plus immediate goals, which is saving life. And so preventive is one piece, but also how can we potentially augment human lives one way or another by expressing good genes.
Yes.
And so I love the future. Most pharma companies, biotech companies, if you see their pipeline, the main goal is to save human lives, right? But I would love to see the future where we are focusing more on enhancing or augmenting human lives. So that's really exciting. And for current goals, like what are those low-hanging fruits that you are currently focusing on in Indian market? Is it to is it early diagnosis of cancer, or is it some Alzheimer's disease, or like what are those low effort, high impact elements that currently genome industry is focusing on in India?
We focus on three broad segments currently where we see there's a huge benefit immediately. One is on rare disease side. There are roughly about 2,000 to 2,500 rare diseases. And the definition of rare disease is very relative. Okay. For a population like UK or US, rare is something they perceive it as rare. Okay. The WHO definition is different. Okay. And how many individuals of that rare disease per this much of population varies from definition to. But considering that 1 billion population, for us, many of these rare diseases are very common. Okay. May not be as common as common diseases like diabetes or anything, but they are pretty common. And so that's one segment. There we help them to, there are many ways how we can help. One of the things is we help the clinicians to accurately diagnose a disease. Okay. There is a difference between how you empirically do a clinical diagnosis with a differential, saying, oh, it could be this, it could be this, like that. There is a difference when you say precisely with a gene-based testing or mutation, you say, no, it is this.
Right.
Then the whole Pandora of opportunities to manage the case is huge. There could be to drug. There could be a way how you set expectations to the family.
Right.
There could be a way how you avoid same debilitating disease in the next generation. There could be a way you can better manage your lifestyle, whatever it is. So there are many things. So each disease has its own problems. So you change the way you manage the disease differently. So here, both physicians as well as patients are empowered significantly. The second, and in these rare diseases, there are about at least half a dozen of them are very common. Okay, a specialty doctor gets every day he sees cases. A simple case of thalassemia. Okay, 7-8 years back, thalassemia, or 10 years back, antenatal diagnosis in thalassemia was not great, which is very important. You go to certain geographies in India, you take central India, you take eastern India, there are hotspots where 1 in 5 individuals are carriers of thalassemia mutations or sickle cell. Okay. Now there are treatments, there are preventive ways. You can tell before a baby is born, the baby is going to be thalassemic or mild, moderate. They can prepare themselves. Right. Okay. Some of these are not life-threatening, but how you manage is going to be very important. Okay. New treatments are coming. There are new treatments for sickle cell anemia coming up. So like this, there are many things. So like this, you take thalassemia, spinal muscular atrophy, congenital adrenal hyperplasia. There are some of the very common diseases which everybody. So there are immediate answers. It's 1 week, 10 days time we can give answers to them, which was not possible about 10. Technology was there for these things, but not accessible. Costs were very high. Not many centers used to do. There were nobody who was going to say, I'll collect sample, I will do the testing for you. It was restricted to institutional practices. So that is something that we completely changed now. Okay, even rarest of rare diseases, about 50% of the cases we identify what it is. Okay. Now sometimes what we call there is a reverse phenotyping that happens. Clinician, for whatever reasons, he is not sure as to what disease is. He knows, okay, this individual has an X disease which is not explainable by any other methods. There is a family history, so this needs to be genetic, but what it is in the sample, we explain it. And they go back and correlate the findings with what clinical symptoms they have.
Right.
So there's a lot of impact there. And the second is on the oncology. The cancer is where genomics, where targeted therapies, where precision medicine is having a huge impact.
Right.
Okay, it ranges from situation to what answers you give. We sequence today tumors and tell what exact drug to be given. Drug A will not work. Drug B will work. Okay. Pharma is discovering drugs based on the genetic profile of the tumors. Okay, there's a sort of a revolution that's happening there now. Second, you would have heard many families have multiple members affected with cancers, familial cancer. It could be breast cancer, it could be ovarian, it could be colorectal, whatever cancer. So they all have a mutation which is passing in multiple individuals. So in those situations in cancer, the biggest advantage is you identify the exact precise mutation by sequencing the genes. You can prevent many cancers much early, because usually, if not all of them, but majority of the cancers are little late stage. Right. They come after 30 or 40 years or 50 years. Okay. So there are now formal recommended management approaches. For example, a lady who has been diagnosed with breast ovarian cancer, and we identify a mutation at the age of 45 or 50, where she has already passed her reproductive age, family is done. Then radical approaches like bilateral oophorectomy or sarcopectomy or mastectomy are done to ensure the life is saved. Right. Okay. So this is just one example. They all have their own eligible criteria how to do that. There are many other management ways. For example, somebody has been diagnosed very early stage. Most of the early stage cancers are treatable. Okay, how do you do that? Mother has breast ovarian cancer, you identify a mutation. Daughter is is not symptomatic, doesn't have a cancer. We can always identify, check the gene mutation, and if she has it, we can always put her on active surveillance. Once in 6 months, do a scan. Once in 6 months, do some blood test. Okay. So this impacts lives to prevent. Okay. So starting from coming up with better drugs, newer targeted therapies, right drug for the right patient, to preventing a disease before it becomes takes out your life, or preventing the disease in the family members. And the next one, we call it as a minimum residual disease. That is, X individual has a cancer. We know what mutation is there. He has been treated. But how do you know whether cancer is not relapsing back? Right. The conventional methods are you do a PET scan, you do some other scans, and they all need a threshold of relapse to happen to detect. Today, genomic technologies are so sensitive and so powerful that even before a PET scan detects it, we can identify whether the individual is going for a relapse. Right. And you do a preemptive treatment. You ensure that you can monitor it 6 months, 1 year, 1.5 years. You clearly monitor and see, oh, he's going for a relapse? No, he's not going for a relapse. He's good. Continue the treatment. Oh, he's going for a relapse. You want to change the treatment, make it aggressive, do it. Right. So that opportunity is there. And the big thing in oncology is going to come in the next 3 to 4 years maximum. Already large clinical trials have been done. Is even few years before you get cancer, you can identify.
That's the future, I'm going to say.
Yeah. Now, sometimes many individuals are a little skeptical or pessimistic. They say, oh, we are making people panicking. But you all have to take this in a proper context, a very optimistic way, very responsible way. Today, somebody goes at the age of 60 or 65 years, you do prostate-specific antigen if it's a male. Okay, you do a CA-125 or some other thing, it's a routine screening, you do it. And many times, these are very, very non-specific markers. The individual doesn't have cancer, but you just see highly elevated, they get panicked, they run, and not very, very poor sensitivity, specificity, false positives are very high. But what we call early detection by genomics is very specific. Okay, and that's where the technologies are moving. They are screening tests, but they are very sensitive to pick up in individuals. They give a lot of advantages compared to the conventional methods. And 6 months, 7 months before even you get to a stage 1 disease, if you are alerted and warned, it's a big boom. You can save thousands and thousands of lives. You don't need to spend billions of dollars of health care. Look at the morbidity, look at the mortality that you can enhance. So this is a huge impact. Whether one likes it or not, this is going to happen. This will happen. It will be like your next 3 to 5 years, it will be like a routine health check. You will be doing a early detection of cancer tests that will happen. So that's going to be a revolution. Our last point is on the reproductive side. So countries like India, where 25 to 30% of our population are at the age of 30 years, the reproductive health is very critical. Okay, we are not like countries like Japan or US, where the age population is much larger. And considering the lifestyles today in India, many of them are working women, many of them do a lot of juggling. So for them, the families are becoming small. It's only 1 or 2 kids. So every pregnancy is precious. And a lot of empowerment has happened by reading literature. And even the practice on the fetal medicine side has changed. They wanted to really give the best of care for a pregnant woman. And as you can understand, the tendency and culture of our country is highest priority to the newborn, or how the healthy the baby is going to be born. So there are a host of genomic technologies today. Some of them are routine tests, which I didn't even imagine 5 years back that is going to be a routine stuff. For example, non-invasive prenatal screening, we call it as. So where we just take maternal blood sample and identify abnormalities in the fetus. Okay. So there are many other things which I'm not saying, but these are high impact funds. So this is what in the 3 broad segments where we are really focused on. But we are getting into the preventive side. That's much larger story. So we are also trying to see how we can bring it to the end consumer, not through healthcare practitioner, because it's a wellness, there's not an illness side. So how responsibly we can bring this is something that we are working on.
Right. I think genomics can play a huge role shifting healthcare from fixing things to preventing diseases. So I think that's where we are heading. One thing you mentioned, the reproductive aspect of it. What are your thoughts about designer babies leveraging genomics?
I think it's a little far-fetched. A lot of ethical issues are there. We need to make certain regulatory, statutory and ethical guidelines more stringent. Enforcements have to happen appropriately. But having been in this field for the last 20 years, I would say both in terms of preparedness, at the same time the readiness of the technology, we are at least about 10-15 years away from it.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because there are a lot of aspects which are unethical. Okay. If you're talking again, the discussion about eugenics and many things will come up. But if you are trying to prevent suffering, deep suffering, and trying to edit genomes for that, that's a different story. Okay. Today, CRISPR-Cas9 edits are happening for some of the very bad debilitating diseases. Okay. It could be cystic fibrosis, it could be retinitis pigmentosa, it could be many. So that's a different story. But if you are doing for recreational purposes, or if you are doing for something that's not too critical, I want a taller baby, I want IQ high, that's, and those genetics are also not fully studied well. Okay, there are very quantitative traits. You can't precisely say oh, this particular gene or variant will really, it's a combination of many factors, combination of lifestyle, combination of culture, ecosystem, along with your genes. So it's a gene environment interactions play a role. So unless until we really understand what really actually is the root cause of some of these traits, which people talk about the gene editing or designer babies, going to them and editing them is something. If you know, recently China, US and all banned the gene editing of embryos and everything. So there are a lot of still work to happen. We need to wait and watch how things will evolve.
It makes sense because currently we are playing based on 23,000 genes, as that expresses. The genes we call like junk.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right, but they, many studies say they have some regulatory. So I can see some potential dangers if we just.
Human biology is very complex, not easy to understand.
It took millions of years to reach.
Yeah. Not only that, we are still scratching the surface. We are still studying more about DNA, a bit about RNA. There is a spatial genomics. There are so many things that are happening, how regulatory things work inside a cell, inside different tissues, when your tissues or cells are exposed to different types of stress, different types of environment, drugs. We are still not aware of what exactly happens.
You use the term recreational, so I would love to know your thoughts about recreational genomics, like personalized genomics. And in the US, we have a couple of companies focusing on this. What are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, fun. So recreational genomics is real fun, as long as you consider it as fun. Okay, but you take it very seriously and try to tweak your life accordingly to that, then that's where is the damage happens. For example, I know one company says by doing a testing, they will tell you whether you can twist your tongue. Okay, there are many traits which are there. Okay, whether you have black eyes, brown eyes, blue eyes, what it is. So there's all a very nice ancestry. For example, in many Western countries, may not be in India, where ancestry becomes very curious thing because a lot of admixture there. Okay, so people want to know who their ancestors are, who their great-grandparents are, which is not like in India. In India, we know for last 3 generations, we know who we are. Okay, but for them, it's so interesting, right? To know, oh, my ancestor came from Middle East, my ancestor came from Europe. It's something. So these are all nice, informative, and they're nice, very good, very pretty accurate. Huh? No, it's not snake oil. It's a fantastic one. So they're all good as long as you consider it's recreational stuff. But there is a difference between what recreational stuff you basically report or analyze the data compared to real health risks, quantifying them and really giving a proper message. So at this point of time, we are focusing on the second aspect more so, considering our country, what are our priority requirements and all. There are very few people who really give a value of spending several thousands of rupees for a recreational stuff in India. There are, but majority are not there. So we always seriously looking into how we can use these technologies to help the patients or individuals or preventing or better managing the health. But nothing wrong with a good recreational stuff as long as there's somebody who is going to take it.
Right. And so one question comes up. Currently, most patients or most individuals don't necessarily have centralized data about their health, right? For many reasons, right? Digitalization is an issue. Ownership is another issue. The insurance is another issue. So just genomics data in silo, do you think it will make more sense if we have immune profile, microbiome data, patient history, and all the data, not just genomics data? Like, where do you see the future?
Future is multi-omics. Okay, that's very clear. It's not just about DNA, it's about RNA, it's about metabolomics, it's about proteomics, it's about microbiome. Okay, the amount of DNA that's present from in humans is only about trillion cells, but there are 100 trillion microbiome cells which are there in our body at different sites. Okay, the challenge is it's far more complex to understand those things, or still what we have understood, compared to what we understood just DNA and RNA level. Okay. So why do you store the DNA, and for what you store is going to be very important. Okay. And garbage in is garbage out. So if you are not trying to put a right approach and collect the data in right way, for example, I collect microbiome data without proper collection procedures. Okay. Give you a small example, 80% of the bacteria which come in a stool sample out of the gut, they are obligate anaerobes. They die the moment you take it. Okay. So there are many things, starting from how you collect the sample, how you treat it, what procedure you follow in the lab, what kind of sequencing you do, and how you really decipher the meaning of the data, interpret the data to biological insights. These part, the other part of the microbiome, or even to some extent proteomics, metabolomics, is much more, far more complicated than just doing a DNA or RNA. That's why the early or the low-hanging fruits have always been in DNA RNA side. But to be very clear, that's the way the field is moving. There are more and more knowledge coming up. Microbiomes, more and more microbiomes are coming. So storing the data, it all depends upon why we store. If it's going to be public data banks, then that's a different story. Okay, all that you need to do is you just devise a plan. And for example, UK Biobank is one of the globally the biggest biobanks for the genomics, especially. They have patient samples. They have huge amount of anthropometric and clinical information they have. So, and it's public. Okay, we download UK Biobank data every time. We have the genomic data, we have the and do a lot of slice and dice analysis of data. So it's like there is a saying says that sequencing the genomes is now like squeezing lemonade. As cheap, it's become a commodity. But where the whole thing is how you take the data and really understand it, interpret it properly. That's where is the billion-dollar stuff. Okay, yeah. So storing data is good as long as you know what your goal, what your objective is very clear, and you do it in a proper way. Yeah, yeah. And privacy concerns are there, so it has to be de-identified. India should quickly align to at least well-set international guidelines like GDPR guidelines. So no misuse of the data is there. It's done in a proper way. It should be used as much as possible for new drugs, everything, but in a proper, concentrated, in a very regulatory approved way, it needs to be done.
Right. Is there any government initiative to digitalize all patient data to inform drug discovery decisions?
India doesn't have it, as far as I know, at least I know. India has been doing some efforts on the health record side. There have been, whether it's Ayushman Bharat or a few other things happening. But linking with the genomics, no. But that's only done, predominantly it's done in Europe and US, UK, the UK Genomics England project. Genomics England is a massive project where sequence hundreds of genomes, and UK Veterans Project, there are many other, where the advantage there is the majority of their public hospitals and even private hospitals have a seamless electronic health records. So EHR is easy to link it, because unless until you link with the clinical health information, there is no point in sequencing data. Okay. But that ecosystem is not available in India, even though EHRs are there in private centers, but not in government centers where the majority of the public data is there. So there are a lot of, we are different pieces. So how you connect them is going to be important. And where you prioritize your money, funds, especially the federal funds in India, is not going to. So whether you spend it on sequencing or spend it on tuberculosis prevention is something that we need to think about.
It's not straightforward. I think human machinery is the biggest source of data, and India has 1.4 billion human bodies.
Yes.
For the lab of
Diverse.
Right, and diverse too. So I think we can inform global drug discovery decision if we
Huge impact.
structure the data, make it machine readable.
Yeah, 100%. And we have so many software data guys, you harness the power, the skill set, it's going to be huge. Okay.
100%.
Yeah, but that force has to come. So somewhere the force has to come. So force could be companies like Medgenome, force would be government of India, but there has to be very unified, real, responsible, heavy force that needs to come. So then China is moving in that direction. US and all are already moving in those directions. So that's going to be really powerful.
Absolutely. One question, I think it's a great segue. What advice would you give to aspiring bio entrepreneurs, bio leaders in India, especially in genomics space?
In India, I think there is an ample opportunity, huge opportunity. I think what at least I realized, because I never was formally trained in business administration or management, but what I could clearly learn is you have an idea and you have the passion to do it, and you show some proof of concept. There are a good number of funding or capital from the private side, whether it's VCs or private equity, who are really willing to put money into that. Okay, so there's nothing like 15, 20 years back, we want to go abroad and do things like. So there's good opportunity both in terms of, I always say this, for genomics, I don't see any better country than India anywhere in the world. Okay, maybe a bit into Africa, it's far more diverse. But India offers, as you mentioned, 1.5. Just imagine not just impact, but the kind of stuff you have all around. Okay, whether it's number of people you have, the IT infrastructure you have, the softwares you have, many things are there. Okay, it's all that you need to just focus, passion, and create something. It's not difficult to create. And for some of them, which I wanted to be very clear, because this is keeping a few things in my mind, is especially those who are doing the recreational stuff or something on wellness in a hurry. Okay, we need to be a little responsible. Okay, otherwise a few rotten apples will spoil the whole basket. Okay, so we need to be clear, responsible. It can't be a short game of 2-3 years, just make fast buck and leave. Okay, so we need to, when you're making a nutrigenomics, is there real science in what you're doing? If you're starting a microbiome company, are your analytical methods are so good to precisely predict something, if not 100%, at least 70 to 80%. So these are the things that we need to keep in mind. Just because there is a hype, we shouldn't do. There has to be real unmet need. There has to be real solid science in it. You should create an expertise, and you show to the world that your thing works. I think there's a huge opportunity.
Totally, and also respecting human privacy, right?
Privacy. Anybody, you can't do things against somebody's consent, and data protection, how you protect it within your company, what kind of statutory things you follow, moral, ethical guidelines. These are all very important.
Dr. Ram, it's a pleasure. And we need genomic revolution in India. Sure. We need more leaders like you. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks very much. My pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. Ram.
Bye.
This video is sponsored by SciSpot, the best tech stack for modern biotech.